And good morning, everybody. You made it to Friday. Congratulations on this holiday week. My name is Bryan Armentrout with the Food Safety Foundation. And of course, if you're here, hopefully you know that this is the Food Safety Chat Live. We do this every Friday to talk about all things food safety. We are currently live streaming on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. And today I have a very special guest, my friend Joe Laino. Joe, how are you doing today?
Good morning, Bryan. How are you?
Good. So in the beginning here, one of the things we like to do is kind of go over the format with everybody, and then people can check in and let us know where they're reaching us from, which is one of the really cool things about this. You'll be amazed. We get people on this live stream from Nigeria and Turkey and Iran and you name it, all over the world, which is really cool. So I am in Loveland, Colorado, which is a little north of Denver, where it's currently a little drizzly outside, which actually is kind of nice. It's been really hot here. Where are you at in the world, Joe?
So I live outside of York, South Carolina, about 45 minutes south and west of Charlotte. Today's the first day it hasn't been 100 degrees in about the last month, so we're kind of fortunate.
Now, did you get a lot of that rain there from the hurricanes and all that type of stuff?
We got real lucky here. About an hour north of us up in the mountains, they got whacked. But here we just got, drizzle and some showers.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I used to live in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, kind of east of Philadelphia, out with the Amish, and some friends out there on Facebook were sending pictures of like flooded areas and things like that. So, hopefully everything's okay with those guys.
We've got some family in New York City, and everything that you saw, there was a shot of a New York City bus that was flooded up to the windows, like inside the bus. It was awful.
Wow.
So no, but we got real lucky here.
Huh, that's craziness. Alba, good morning. Alba's in San Francisco. Always nice to see her. So everybody, please, let us know where you're listening to us from. It's really fun to do that. One of the things that we do with this Food Safety Chat, if you're new to this, is one of the things in this space and with this type of information that we see all the time is webinars and these type of things where you have a presenter and they're going through their deck and these type of things, and then you ask questions at the end. This is different in that this is interactive, and really what we're looking for here is a conversation, right? We're wanting to have a discussion around today's topic, which is allergens, by the way, and get your feedback and share with each other and talk about how you're managing these type of things as well. Good morning, Rich and Trevor. Nice to see you guys. Because part of this is sharing information. And one of the core tenets, I'm sure Joe's going to agree with this as well too, is that food safety is not a point of competition, right? If one company fails in their allergen management program, it impacts everybody because that lowers public trust. Because then moms who have children with allergies or things like this aren't sure what they can feed their children. And if you're not sure, you aren't going to buy it, right? You can have the best quality systems in the world. And if you don't have the trust of the public, it doesn't matter. So we're all in this together, and that's what we're here today, is to help share information. So the more people participate in this process, the better off it is. So Lance, good morning from Northern California. Nice to see you. PCQI as well. So Preventive Control Qualified Individual. Gotta like that. So one of the things, and Joe, I'm always so anxious to get into the conversation, and I forget to do this. And that's everybody. Grab your favorite beverage of choice, and depending on where you are in the world, that may change. And with Friday, that may change as well too. For us, it's coffee. Well, at least for me, it's coffee. You got coffee in there, Joe?
I test.
So everybody, grab your favorite beverage and join us for our morning sip.
Cheers, guys.
Oh, that's tasting extra good today for some reason. I like that. Very nice. So with that, we're going to jump into our topic, everybody. Good morning, Corey. Nice to see you always. And that's allergens. And it's interesting because both of us have the perspective of operations and auditing. So Joe's background, he's worked over 30 years and he's with comprehensive food safety. I'm not too far behind you. And he's kind of worked on both sides of those things, right? And so he is the compliance and food safety consultant, compliance manager with CFS, Comprehensive Food Safety. We got his email on there if you want to reach out to Joe. And out of your resume, I was looking through this, and you have over 3,000 hours as an SQF auditor.
Yeah.
That's like spending a full-time job in a plant a year and a half, right? That's amazing.
It feels like it sometimes.
and also you have experience in BRCGS auditing as well, right? So two of the big standards under the Global Food Safety Initiative. And one of the things, it's nice having both those perspectives, and that's what I saw on my side as well too, is the auditing gives you that kind of that bigger picture, right? You're able to get out of your particular bubble that you may be locked into in a production facility or a plant or a company or things like that, and get a bigger perspective on how things are done within allergens. I think that perspective only helps companies, right? And again, it's getting out and helping other people with food safety.
Yeah.
Hopefully I pronounced this correctly, Vimal, Vimal. Good morning to you, sir. Nice to have you here. So, Joe, it's just, allergens, right? Allergen recalls, year in, year out. It's like, oh, come on. We see them time and time again. And I'm not going to mention any company names. People can look this up. Right. But some companies have repeat allergen issues time and time again. There's one company had another recall here recently for allergens, and it was a very small one. It was only a few pounds. I think it was like 15 pounds of product caused a class 1 recall, which is crazy. Looking at the data from FDA, which is pretty current, so far year to date, Joe, we have 71 recalls for allergens.
It's and this is going to tie into some of the things that I'm passionate about, not just as an auditor, but as a consultant and as a consumer. I personally, I am deathly allergic to shrimp. Okay. So for me, anything to do with seafood as a whole, I kind of, shy away because I don't know what the label is, the right bag and the right product in the right bag. But it amazes me that the true root cause of all of these are so easily preventable. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of some of the things that I think we want to talk about today is what are you folks doing in your plants? What do your programs look like? As an auditor, and I think everybody here knows Bob Strong, Dr. Bob, and years back, Dr. Bob said something to me that changed my world. And he said, as auditors, we go in and we focus an hour on pest control or an hour on their glass breakage and, or an hour on their preventative maintenance. Like, when was the last time there was a class 1 recall because of a PM issue, right? Like, all of our recalls are focused around allergen management, environmental monitoring. So this is where auditors should be focusing their time and their efforts, and understanding that you've got, 2.5, maybe 3 days to do an audit. And there's a lot of paperwork to look at. I get it, believe me. But we as an industry need to start paying much more attention, because so many of these allergen situations are preventable. They really are.
I think you hit it on the head right there, Joe. These are preventable. This isn't the situation where a supplier sends you an allergen by mistake and you don't see it or things like this. In most of these cases, from what I've seen, these are process controls within a facility where things aren't working correctly. Yep. Reminds me of a story from my career. So we had a recall, class 1 recall, when I was in charge of quality at a company. Something I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. And I was talking with my boss, the CEO, after the recall was over. And thankfully, there was no illnesses or things like this, right? But those type of things, when they happen, Joe, it's a real, wake up call for a company.
Yeah.
And it happened at a bad time. Of course, right? They always happen at bad times. And my CEO was kind of talking out loud about that. And it's like, geez, Bryan, why did this recall happen now, right? It's right in the middle of the busy season. We have lots of orders to fill. Couldn't have happened at a worse time, right? He's looking at it from a business standpoint. And I told him, I said, of course it happened at the wrong time. It happened at the wrong time because of that. It's not in spite of. It happened because we're busy. We're stressed. We're pushing the lines to the max. We're pushing the sanitation to make sure that we're making as much product as we can. We're doing changeovers as fast as we can to try and get those orders done and satisfy our customers. Of course it happens now. This is because we're not following things as closely as we should during the times when we're not stressed.
Absolutely.
And he kind of went, oh, right. And so we learned from that, which was great.
You mentioned about the wrong time. There's never a right time to have a recall. And, and throughout my career, and you said 30 years, and you're being generous. Thank you. I just stopped counting at 30 years because I just sound like I'm ancient. Right. But, I've worked in industry for many, many years. And I've been through one recall in my career, and you talk about the wrong time. And it's funny that we talk about this today, because the recall that I was associated with broke at 2:00 on the Friday of Labor Day weekend.
Yeah.
So, it ended up being a very long weekend. The 800 consumer hotline number was my cell phone. Yeah. So needless, thank God I have a very understanding family, because it just didn't stop ringing all weekend. But, we need to be thinking as industry about where, and as we said, so many of these are label related. Okay. Wrong product in the wrong bag, undeclared XYZ. Where's that coming from? And there's so many different places it can be coming from, but the likelihood of your printer making a mistake is minimal. Okay. Because and even if they did, somebody has to approve that label internally. What does that process look like? Line changeovers, and we all know. And I did one stint as a plant manager, and I'll never do it again. So anybody on the call who's a plant manager, bless your soul, because I thought quality was a headache. Then I became a plant manager.
Oh yeah.
But downtime is deadly. And if you watch NASCAR, the cars in and out of pit lane in 7 seconds. I mean, downtime is a killer. And so there's so much pressure for these companies to minimize downtime. And every time they change the roll stock, it's downtime. Yeah. So there's that pressure to get the line back up and running. That maybe we're not emptying the hopper or the upstream conveyor to get that product the right product into the right bag. Things about, we talk about your preventive controls. I mean, everybody now that's in the FSMA side of the industry, it's time. Okay. There's no more extensions, even the little itty bitties or the mom and pops or whatever you want. Everybody now must be FSMA compliant. So where's your sanitation validation? How effective is that? We know that allergen control doesn't have to be validated, but our sanitation preventive controls do. So how do we ensure that our sanitation is effective, that if it's not a label related or a wrong product in the wrong bag thing, are we at least eliminating that concern of cross contact from an allergen product to a non-allergen?
Right. I mean, you're hitting on some really good points here, right? So your changeovers within your plant, right? Because you're changing that film over on that machine, and you may have some that's left over in that machine. You may have a few bags that you've got to run out of that machine in order to switch over to the new product. And let's say then that you step away during that time to take a break, and somebody walks by and says, "Oh, hey, here's 3 bags of product on the line. Who left these here?" Right? And they throw them in a box. Boom, off it goes. Simple as that. Simple as that. And
I just saw that Trevor. Hey, Trevor. By the way, hi. How are you? Trevor and I go back a ways. Why hasn't the U.S. considered the allergens EU addresses for a total of 14? Why did it take us this long to add sesame? I mean, the amount of import export work back and forth between U.S. and Canada. Don't quote me. I think it's a third of what we produce we export to them. And I believe a third of what they produce, they export to us. So why don't we have the same 11? I talk about, let's make our hard jobs harder. And then, as we all know, or hopefully we all know, sesame is coming into play as an allergen here in the U.S. starting January 2023. We have to ease into these things. We can't rush into these things. We got to take our time. I don't know if the U.S. hasn't considered it, Trevor. They would be foolish to not consider it. I don't know. That's a great question for maybe get Frank Yanis on here someday and ask him.
Yeah. Well, I think, from my perspective too, a lot of it is political decisions, right? Of how do we manage these things from a governmental standpoint. Now, there's nothing stopping companies from doing this themselves, right? Larger international companies ask those questions and say, do you have lupins or things like this, right, in your products? And they will go kind of above and beyond and look at the allergen, and then they'll also look at sensitizing agents, mustard or things like this as well too, sulfites, stuff like this, to kind of give a more comprehensive view, which is nothing stopping them, right? And you need to figure out in your company if that's something you should do or you should do, right?
Absolutely.
Part of this then is, how are you managing that from a legal standpoint?
Absolutely.
There's lots of moving parts associated with that labeling side of things. Generally, I think, and let's see if you agree with this statement, Joe, a lot of these labeling issues happen at the plant, but corporate can exacerbate these as well too. Because
Absolutely.
if you're a larger consumer packaged good company, right, you're looking for ways to promote your product and get that attention on the shelf, right? And that's what the marketing guys are there for. And hat tip to the marketing people. When I started my own consulting business and was out on my own, I realized just how difficult marketing and sales and these type of things are. So amazing job that they do, right? They're always trying to figure out that way to get the consumer's attention. And so Absolutely. A lot of times you would see holiday specials or holiday bonus packs, right? Or, and so marketing comes up with this fancy new label and they tell the plant, okay, guys, we've got this holiday label that we want to run with this special. We need you to run this from November to December 15th. Okay, right now the plant has an extra variable of something that they need to run.
Right.
They've got the old packaging, they've got the new packaging, they've got to change over, they've got to make so much of this, and they got to change back. And then the old packaging, because it never matches up perfectly, the old roll stock for the old and the promotional stuff, right now, that's got to go back into storage maybe for next year or something like that.
Yeah.
And you're counting on a whole lot of moving pieces to get those things right.
Yep.
Now, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. I was just gonna say, because then we pull the wrong roll of film because we thought, we ran out, but we've got to pack another 50 cases, and again, it's just so much of this is human control. I just have to take one moment, and I just want to say good morning to my two colleagues, Rich Gibson and Aaron Rector, who are on the line. Clearly, Aaron and Rich have nothing better to do than to sit here and listen to me. But thanks, guys, for joining. So label storage, label reconciliation. As a client that I just audited, any labels that are not current and active, any film that's not current and active is actually stored in an offsite warehouse. Like, wow, that's what that. I mean, not everybody has that luxury, of course, but that's the way to do it. Get it as far away from your process as possible.
Right. And if you have, and this is something that some companies are good at and others aren't, is revision control. Have systems in place so you can actually identify what revision of what label on that roll stock is what, and that the guys on the line can actually check that. Because film, right, super expensive, right? Yeah. These rolls are extremely expensive and nobody wants to throw them away. To your point, Joe, it's like, okay, we had the promotion, we have an extra couple of rolls. We're going to use them next year. Let's store those. Put them somewhere where nobody can get access to them. Right. And you have revision control with checks on the line to make sure that you're getting the right stuff on the machine.
I had somebody tell me once, well, I can just store them in my car. I'm like, well, good. Yeah, no. Noble gesture, but probably not. Two other things that we need to be thinking about also, Bryan, is rework. And what's your R&D team doing? If R&D is bringing in, and bless R&D, right? Because sales drives profits and profits drive our paychecks. But R&D, if you're in a facility that maybe you don't have, maybe you don't have tree nuts in your facility or in any of your products, but R&D wants to come out with a peanut encrusted, walnut sprinkled cookie. And now they're going to run it on the line, and we just have to run just a short run, and it will, and then boom, we're off to the races. Rework is something else too. And as an auditor, I see less and less facilities conducting rework. Many facilities now are just taking the mindset, you know what, we're just going to throw it away. There's a difference between rework and remixing, and remixing is like into like, or even better than that, it's exact into exact. Okay?
Right. I think that's a good point, Joe, because I want to reemphasize that, make sure people understand. If you're producing during the production day and you're taking product on the line, let's say that the package didn't quite seal right, and you open back up and you dump the product back in the bin, right? That's not rework, right? Rework is you have finished product sitting in a warehouse and you're like, oh, we're going to take that and then put this into this new lot, and we're going to rework that into our manufacturing process. And I agree with you. I think most companies realize the risk associated with that.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when you're looking at recalls from FDA and you see so-and-so has a recall, and then a few weeks later you see so-and-so expands recall, it's probably because of something like that. FDA came in and said, okay, the way that you've got this bookended between production runs, here's your sanitation run, beginning and end. Well, your rework jumped over that wall, and really you have a lot more stuff to recall than you think. And that's when those things expand. And that's very dangerous using that product.
Yeah. And that's why I understand the financial side of it, again, having worked in operations and working with multiple facilities in a fortune setting. Every penny is counted, and I get that. But what's the peace of mind worth?
Right.
As everybody knows now, SQF with this edition 9 now talks about food safety culture. BRC's had it in play, for a couple of years now. But to me, food safety culture, it's not about banners and balloons and TV stream. Oh, look, SQF is coming. Who cares, right? If you've been achieving solid GFSI ratings over the years, your AA's or your 95 pluses, there's obviously a commitment to food safety culture. But part of that is looking critically at things like, is the rework worth the headache? What is our R&D team up to? And this, so we could talk hours about any one topic right now that's hot in this industry. But I don't remember the exact number, but like 60% of all the recalls now are allergen related. And that's actually up over the past couple of years. And part of it is because now things are more reportable. Part of it, I think, is because of the preventive controls that are now more visible to facilities, particularly to FDA. Yeah. But we have to do a better job. And there are some big names. And as we mentioned earlier, we don't mention names, but there are some real big household names that have had multiple recalls in the last 5-6 years that, I wouldn't, it's time to think about what are we doing? And you can do things fast, you can do things right. Very rarely can you do them fast and right. And I think the pressure on facilities to produce and to meet budget, we're seeing it's coming. It may be coming at a cost.
Yep, absolutely. Good morning, Bryan, my friend. Good to see him. So you'll appreciate this, I think, Joe, from a plant manager perspective, because what I would always train my quality managers is to think about how they do their job in 3 main buckets. There is data that they're looking at from an operational standpoint. So as a plant manager, the stuff you need to understand to run the plant and make sure it's efficient and you're making money, right? So pounds per man hour, downtime, OEE, operational efficiency of machinery, how much electricity am I using in the plant? How are my people doing, right? All the things that the plant manager needs to run the business of running a food plant. The other 2 buckets for a quality manager are more under their direct control. That first bucket of the operational data is important, but from a quality standpoint, it's not directional. It's not going to help you figure stuff out for quality. So the 2 buckets for a quality manager are food quality. And those are those aspects of that product in the specification that we want it to be, right? So the example I use is like my coffee, right? It's got a certain taste. It's got a flavor. If I add cream to it, here's what it takes. I have an expectation as a consumer, and as a quality manager, I need to understand that so I can maintain that standard. Right. The third bucket, which what we're really talking about here, is food safety, right? And that's a go, no go, right? That's an easy one, right? If there's any type of an issue, in particular, we're talking about allergens here today. If there's any type of a food safety issue, right, there's no compromise, right? We need to have robust systems. And so part of the quality manager's job is to say, all right, the food safety bucket is sacrosanct. We're not going to mess with that. If we can figure out other ways to improve efficiency operationally and quality-wise, great. We'll figure those things out.
Mm-hmm.
But let's never mess with food safety, right? And so part of that, and that's part of that food safety culture piece, is really pounding the drum on that and making sure that that's well understood.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of things, and this kind of circles back to a point you had made earlier, which is things that are outside of the normal, right? So R&D is a huge one of those. I have a story from my past where I was visiting one of my plants and I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. And R&D was in there doing some stuff. And they were in the plant. They were getting ready to run a pilot trial. And so I started talking with them and say, hey guys, what you doing? I said, oh, we're running a trial. Okay, great. What you doing? And so they started explaining it to me, and they were running an allergen. And I'm like, what are you doing? And they're like, oh, no. This is an R&D project. This isn't normal production. I'm like, the allergens do not care. And luckily they hadn't started yet. And so I shut them down. Did I have some angry R&D people? Yeah, I did. But
right,
they should never, ever, ever have been doing that. And so one of the things I with my clients that I always emphasize is your food safety team and the food safety plan in the plant. That's your religion, right? And you need to beat it into everybody's head if you have to, that nothing happens in this plant involving food safety that doesn't get the blessing of the food safety team, right? So that R&D group should have gone to the food safety team for approval, right? Yep. And that was the missing link in that process. Absolutely.
And Trevor asked a great question. Well, it's more of a statement than a question. Food safety culture with integrity. Absolutely. The integrity appears to be missing from many teams. When is leadership changing their approach? And I will tell you, for many facilities, they change their approach when? After
something
had a problem. Okay, it's not going to happen to me. It's not going to happen here. We're fine. Never happened before. We've never had an issue before. Okay. Yeah. The Titanic never had an issue.
Yeah.
Okay, and then they got a little too big for their britches, and every time my family will tell you, every time Titanic is on, if I see it on its HBO show, I have to watch, and I have to see if they hit the iceberg again. And lo and behold, every time it's on, they hit the iceberg, and I just say, if they just learn from their mistakes, didn't sail so fast. Maybe sailed a little further south where the water was warmer. They wouldn't have hit it. They wouldn't have sunk. Jack wouldn't have frozen to death. The ginormous Sapphire wouldn't be in the bottom of the North Atlantic. Just once, I want them to learn from, and they keep failing at it. So, and it's a movie, guys. I get it. I know. But the point is, learn from other people's mistakes. Okay. Yeah. When the fire's present, right? We close the door after the barn door after the horse runs. A guy I used to work with used to always say, we wait for the car to drive off the cliff, and then we say, you know what, we should put a guardrail up there. That's very true. The last thing I wanted to talk about was about, we talked about sanitation validation and swabbing. And so many times, particularly on the audit side of things, I will see, and I have consulting clients who still think this is acceptable, where ATP swabbing is the solution for allergen validation. And I'm like, the industry's become pretty clear on this, and SQF actually has a guidance document that ATP swabbing is not sufficient to prove allergen cleaning is effective, that you actually have to do allergen swabbing, specific allergen swabbing, not just ATP. ATP says it's either dirty or it's clean. It's just looking for protein. It's not differentiating between wheat protein, dirty hands protein. It's not. So we need to be thinking about what are our sanitation efforts, how robust are they in ensuring, and part of your sanitation validation is swabbing.
I mean, so I think it's a great example. So I have a visual in my head here, right? So ATP, so adenosine triphosphate, right? The energy molecule for bacteria. That's what you're testing for. Allergens, you're looking for a protein, completely separate things. So let's say you had an example of, let's say that you had a sterile peanut butter, right? No bacteria in the peanut butter, things like that. And you smush that all over your equipment and test it for ATP. You're going to pass, right? You're going to pass.
Yep.
And it's covered in peanut butter. I mean, come on. No, two completely different things. So maybe that visual will help people.
I'm sitting here laughing because Aaron typed, "Never let go, Jack. Never let go."
Never. Well, and on the sanitation piece too, FDA gets a lot of companies on that, right? They'll come in and say, okay, we're here to check your preventive controls and look at your food safety plan. So we're going to look at allergens and sanitation. And FDA, the investigator, right? They're not inspectors anymore. Remember that, right? They're investigators.
Right.
The investigator's in there and he starts saying, all right, do you have an allergen control program? Yes. And you start laying it all out. And you say, here's how we clean and here's how we do these things. And then FDA says, how do you know that works? Right? How do you know it works? Right? So that's where the swabs come in.
No.
You also need to understand, and you can get some help from your chemical company on these type of things too. You need to understand what flow rate, what temperature, what GPMs, what pressure, all these type of variables that go into the main cleaning processes, right? For clean in place and clean out of place, that those things are correct for what you're doing. And the sanitation company needs to understand it. It's like, yep, I'm making this product and it's got honey and peanut butter and all kinds of stuff, right? And then the sanitation company is going to come back and say, yep, here's the program you need to follow to do that. And they need to give you that information. So when FDA asks that question, you have a good answer. And a lot of companies don't have that.
Yeah, I agree. And with the swabbing component, a lot of times we get asked, I may have wheat, soy, dairy, all in my product, which, do I have to swab for all three? It's going to get expensive. And we understand that. And according to the SQF document, you can do one of two things. One is swab for the most prevalent ingredient in your formula. If it's wheat and there's no wheat, we can make the relative assumption that the soy and the dairy have been eliminated. Mm-hmm. They have these all-in-one swabs now, which I don't know a whole lot about, but you can also swab for the protein that's the hardest to remove, which in most cases is dairy. But yeah, we absolutely need to be, I don't want to say slow down because then I'll have a lot of people yelling at me about productivity, but we need to just take a breath and think about what we're doing. 117, 135 is pretty clear about the expectations from preventive controls now. We just need to do a far better job. And and it's funny, we're not seeing this in any one. Absolutely right, Rich. As consultants and auditors, we hear a lot of excuses and uneducated theories. And for those of you that don't know Rich Gibson's a guy you need to get to know, because every time I have a question, it's like when the cops need help, they call the SWAT team. When I need help, I call Rich Gibson. That's how smart of a guy this guy is. He's absolutely right. We hear excuses and I thought, no, don't think. The information's there. You just have to, it's this thing called Google. And I know nothing about plumbing, and I had to replace a faucet in my kitchen last weekend. How did I do it? I YouTubed it. Okay. Yeah. The information's there. There's no reason to be making it up as we go along. But
I think that's an important point with experts like Rich and things like this, right? Is that I think in quality, we have this expectation on our shoulders, and we put it there ourselves, that we need to know everything, right? We need to be an expert in everything. And guess what? Nobody's an expert in everything, right? It's much better to know who the expert is and go ask them questions.
Yep, absolutely.
So the example I like to use for this is my friend Kathy Gambas, who we used to work together at Dean Foods, and she went to FDA, and she was very involved there with FSMA and foreign supplier verification and things like that. And her knowledge is amazing. Right? If I have an FSVP question that I don't know, I'm calling her and talking with her.
Phone a friend.
She knows, she's forgotten more about it than I know. Right. So why would I spend all that time doing that when I can go directly to the expert?
Phone a friend.
Collaborate.
There's always somebody that knows more than you or me or any. I know what I know, and I've been very successful at it. I've been lucky. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good, as they say. But I don't profess to. And as I mentioned earlier, I've learned from people I've learned from you. I mean, you and I go back a bit, and I've learned things from you about different things regarding quality and food safety. So I think as an industry, we need to talk more. Unfortunately, these a lot of the trade shows that are out there focus on things that aren't necessarily germane or pertinent to food safety. The SQF show is a great show. The BRC show is a great show. Certainly some of those speakers up there are what I consider to be industry experts. Just listen and learn. And there are so many of these lunch and learn webinars. And, as an auditor, I have to log 15 hours of CEUs every year, plus the 4-hour update. I'll do the lunch and learn thing. And if I miss the live broadcast, I can always get the pre-recorded. There's so much to learn out there, and we just have to do a better job at it.
Yep. So with allergens, I think this applies to a lot of other things. So we'll kind of pull back a little bit, and I'll give you my take on this. Is I think one of the things that we tend to do in quality, and this is just part of how we look at things and how we're trained, is we think of things in terms of processes, right? And this is kind of what we're talking about here today, right? Allergens, that's a process. But when we write the procedure, right, we'll write it as one big process. And I think that's not the right way to do it. Why is that? Because there's no one person who's doing that, right? It's like if you're in a dairy plant and you're making cheese, there's nobody who's making the cheese, right? There's a guy who receives the milk. There's a guy who makes the curd. There's a guy who prepares the loaves. There's a person who packages it and a person who ships it, right? Everybody hands off to the people downstream to get to the finished product. And allergens is exactly the same. It's even bigger because now you're impacting all kinds of things, right? There's people at corporate who are making decisions on the packaging and the labeling and the declarations and all these type of things, who then hand it off to the procurement group, who then go out and find ingredients and materials and get them approved and get them at the right price and these type of things. Then you have the R&D group doing their pilot trials and all these type of things, all handing off to different groups in this process, right? And then, I don't know, about 10 steps or so down the way, it finally gets to the plant, right? Yeah. Now you got the plant that needs to manage this and figure all these different type of things out. There's lots of handoff and lots of different steps in between where different people need to understand their roles in allergen management. And when you look at it, I think, Joe, from a big picture perspective, that's food safety culture, right? That's food safety culture. So it's teaching the R&D guys that, hey, I know I'm the quality guy and you're the R&D guy. Let me kind of walk you through some of the things that you need to be thinking about in your role. As you're buying these things, yes, you're trying to come up with the perfect pilot trial, the perfect benchmark sample, to meet what the consumer wants and all these type of things at the right price, et cetera, et cetera. You can never forget about food safety. Let me show you what you need to be thinking about as you're doing this. It's better to ask those questions up front.
Absolutely. And I'll tip my hand a little bit on this one. Any of you who have ever had or gone through a GFSI audit, and I don't care, SQF, BRC, FSSC, gluten-free, IFS Pack Secure, any one of them, if your auditor is answering that question about food safety culture at the beginning of the audit, I don't agree with that. How do I assess your level of commitment to food safety till I've been there, for a day or two or three? And, from auditing, and I'm sure everybody here can agree with this, you walk into a facility, in the first 5-10 minutes, like what's going on. You got to feel it for it. Okay, you do. And usually it starts like when you pull in the parking lot, if it's a nice looking parking lot and it's not a dirt gravel with potholes, that there are fishing ponds in the potholes. You get it. But how do you assess, food safety culture encompasses everything. So, I don't answer that question until towards the end because how do you know? So what's their commitment to allergen management? I'll see it during, the document review, and I'll see it during the facility tour, but it's just paperwork, right? And until food safety happens in the plant, not necessarily in a manual. And the plant is where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. But that's the food safety culture encompasses, and that's probably a topic for like a whole nother, food safety chat. All the things that go into it,
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I mean, wow, so many good things in what you just said. So, from a quality standpoint and from an auditor or someone coming in to evaluate those facilities, it's not, right? So I want to reemphasize what you just said. It's not the documentation.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, right? The documentation is the proof that you did it and how you do it. But as I would train my quality managers, one of the things that I would teach them was you need to tell your story. And the example, Joe, I use for that is supplier management. Saying, okay, there's reasons why you do things, and that's in the procedures. But guess what? There's also reasons why you don't do things. Right? You don't need to have the same level of scrutiny for the salt supplier as you do for the allergen supplier. Right? You have different requirements.
Absolutely.
And if I'm the quality manager and you're the auditor, Joe, coming into my plant, I need to explain those things to you. And understanding those and being able to communicate those things to you is part of food safety culture, right? Mm-hmm. And walking through that entire process, back to our allergen example, through the entire company, right? R&D, why do you care about food safety? Because of this and this and this and this, right? And if I don't do this correctly, the plant can't run it. If the plant can't run it, what am I doing? Procurement, what do you do for food safety? Here's what I do for food safety, right? And all these different type of things. It's just not about price. It's just not about hitting the target for the product. It's encompassing.
Right.
And to your point, it's kind of like art, Joe. It's like, I don't know art, but I know what I like, right? It's kind of the same type of thing. You go into a plant, you pick up on that stuff really quickly, right? And as an auditor, you see these things, right? You have the opening meeting, and the only person sitting in the room is the quality manager. Mm-hmm. Versus you go to the opening meeting and every supervisor, every manager, the plant manager, all are there listening with notes and pencils, and they're paying attention, and they're available to you anytime you need them, right? This is important, and they show you it's important.
Right. I agree. And I just 2 weeks ago did an audit for a company, and the opening meeting, we're in this COVID age, and obviously vaccinated, not vaccinated. I'm not going to get into that, but we're back to the point where our opening meetings now, we can have people in a room, right? And I did this one facility, and there were 16 people in the opening meeting. And I just kind of sat back, and they were all very nervous because it was my first time there. And I'm like, did you guys shut the plant down? Like, who's running the plant? Everybody's in here, it was a great thing to see. But and we tell our clients at CFS, whatever's going on is not as important as this audit. Okay. I've got a client who they just came into their unannounced audit window last Monday. So we're all holding our breath. When's the audit going to be? And I said, the day this guy shows up, unless there is literally a fire in that building, I don't want to say, in that building, you're with the auditor. Okay. We have to demonstrate that I know they're committed. They know they're committed, but they're busy. Well, I'm like, well, okay. You know what? We're all busy, right? If we weren't busy, we wouldn't have a job. So we're all busy, but this is your priority and focus. We have to demonstrate that we're on top of, SQF has 17 sections to it. Okay. 17 programs driving 100 documents. We need to demonstrate that we're on top of our game.
Right. Allergens
is a high visibility part of it right now. Is it the most important? I don't know. It's certainly the hot ticket right now.
Right.
There are other topics that tie into it, environmental monitoring and training. I think training is the key to all of this, and training and understanding. So, and Trevor raises a good point. The writing's on the walls. It is, Trevor. It's on. You're absolutely right. Spot on.
Absolutely. And I think, and I think that's why this conversation has kind of gone the way it's gone, is that allergen control is a big picture item in a company, right? It's not one discrete little thing that you do,
correct,
right? Everything in that plant, direct and indirect, is involved with that. So what the corporate guys are doing, what's going on in the plant, what the receiving people are doing, right? and putting those programs together to make sure that you have roadblocks in place to make sure that the wrong stuff doesn't get in. Even simple things. One of the things I love to do with my clients is in receiving, take pictures of everything you receive and then put them in a book and put arrows next to all the things that they need to check. Here's the lot code. Here's the kosher symbol. Here's the ingredient statement. Here's what the name of it is. So that it's a nice, easy check. So if something shows up and it doesn't match that picture, it's like, whoa, right? And they don't bring that in, right? They hold the truck, they get the quality people or whatever, right? And it's breaking up that process. Again, it's really, really important. It's a hard thing for quality people, right? So this is why I kind of like to pound on this, is that there is no allergen procedure, right? There's a whole bunch of other things, subsets of things that need to happen. And if one of those goes wrong, the entire system is going to fail. Absolutely. So you have to understand what all those pieces are and those handoffs. Who is doing what at what stage? And then creating the procedures accordingly to that to meet the overall objective of how you manage allergens and being able to tell your story of how you do that. If I come in or you come in or somebody comes into the plant, FDA, right?
Absolutely. I'm reading Brandon's comment here. Allergens and environmental monitoring was 2010. Yeah. True story.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, you know what? He writes JK, but you know what? You're right. You're absolutely right. So we just need to do a better job. That's all. Bottom line, we need to do it better, smarter, not harder. I don't like working harder. I think I work hard enough. Rich, did you hear that? I think I work hard enough, but I think we need to do. I think we need to do it smarter as an industry. I really do.
Yep. And the training piece again, and Trevor mentioned this as well too, is super important, right? Training is not putting people who are tired at the end of a shift into a room and then reading a PowerPoint to them and then giving them a quiz at the end. Mm-hmm. Okay, fine. You may hit the requirements of an audit, but is that really training? No, it's not. And we all know, and every plant operates exactly the same. Training takes place on the floor, right? And it's how you teach, right? It's that interaction between the supervisor and his trainee or whoever is running them through the ropes of here's how we do things, here's why we do things, et cetera, et cetera. So if the messaging on the floor and as the quality manager, you don't know this, is, okay, our job is to get product out quickly. So you need to bam, bam, bam. You need to really change. Here's how you change over the machine fast. Ignore the work instruction. Here's how you do it my way. You got problems.
Yeah. You know, and Trevor raises a good point about the training is critical. You know, I don't know if you've had GFSI audits where the auditor does the employee interviews, and I sort of stopped doing them last year because of COVID, and now I'm back to, I like talking to people. And I don't, hey, what does SQF stand for? What does BR? Really? This is what you're going to ask the employees on the line? Really? And I still see auditors ask that question. What does SQF stand for? I'm like, guy, lady, really? I go to the key actionable steps. Yeah. Okay. If this is a preventive control step, or if this is a CCP, whatever we want to call it, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. What do you do? Do you know what your job duties are? What happens when you test that metal detector and it doesn't reject? What do you do? What was your training? Right. If you're the line operator and you're the one responsible for changing the film, are you empowered to just hit the stop button? I think those types of questions are the ones that we need to be asking our employees.
Yeah. Crucial point right there. I think it's a great one to kind of close this out with and bring it back up, is that what I look for and what I do when I create documents is it's all well and good to document things, how to do things right. To your point, Joe, what do you do if it's not right? What do you do if the metal detector goes off? What do you do if the bags aren't sealing correctly? What do you do at receiving if the ingredients aren't quite right? What do? Do you kind of go, and bring it in and say, quality will figure it out later? Right. No. Right. That important piece I think is missing from a lot. So in closing, and one of the things, Joe, that you'll notice with this, right, we're already at almost 49 minutes on our call. How fast the time flies during these conversations.
It really does.
And I feel like we've barely scratched the surface because allergens is such an important topic. And again, right, it's got its own section in SQF, right? FDA under the FSMA regs, right, under preventive controls, wrote a section on allergens, right? And links in with all these other things. Allergens, super important. And every year in and year out, we keep having allergen recalls.
Yep.
And it's preventable, right? And as quality managers and food safety professionals, right, we really need to take it to heart and go beyond ourselves and seek out experts and people like Trevor and people like all these people within our network who can help us do these things, right? Don't try to do it all your own. If it's already been figured out, figure out who has done it and then replicate what they're doing, right? You don't need to reinvent the wheel. So allergens, right? I mean, be able to tell that story and explain it to an auditor. I don't know, does that a good summary, Joe? What are you thinking?
Excellent summary. There's no, as much as we think we're out there alone, you're not. And
Right.
you know, again, not to make light of the phrase, but phone a friend.
Yeah.
And if you don't have a friend, there's plenty of chat boards out there. You know, IFSQN has a great chat board. You can Google it. Like I said, I'm a big fan of Googling stuff for answers. And believe me, just because it's on the internet doesn't mean it's right. However, it's a good step in that direction. Hey, Trevor, it was good catching up with you. Thanks. I know you got to go. I appreciate you stopping by.
Awesome.
But yeah, I think if you just look for the help, it's there. In whatever fashion. Consultants, you know, throw a little plug out there to the consulting industry. There's all kinds of opportunities out there.
Absolutely. So, you know, and again, right, we're here to help, and food safety is a collaborative process. My email is on here. Joe's is on here as well. Reach out to us. If you have additional questions, we're happy to help. So fire off an email and let us know, and we'll get back to you right away. So,
Absolutely.
Allergens. Wow. Important topic. So everybody, right, we'll be back here again next Friday, 8 a.m. Mountain Time, 10 a.m. Eastern for another food safety chat. And again, here we're on LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook for everybody, so you can check us out. Thank you, everybody, for participating. That makes this so much better to have that participation in the interaction, and we really enjoy it. So thank you very much for that. And everybody, have a really enjoyable Labor Day weekend here in the U.S., and have a great time. Enjoy your barbecue, and hopefully things with this whole COVID mess are settling down. Fingers crossed, but we'll see how all that goes. Joe, my friend, have a good weekend and enjoy yourself.
Thank you, Bryan.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care.